talking about the general plan of the human kidney. Basically, as we said last little piece, there's two kidneys, and they're usually on the top side, that is the dorsal side of the body. And they have a couple of major arteries and veins running there. The renal artery is coming in, and the renal vein is leaving. Usually, about 20% of the blood passes through the kidney at a time, or a day, I guess. And urine is collected and passed out of the ureter, which then goes into the bladder where it can be held for a little while, and then out the urethra. A nephron is one functional unit of the kidney, of which there's like a million of them in one kidney. There's two areas. There's the renal cortex, which is the outer part, and the renal medulla, which is the inner part. There are tubules, one per nephron. They have a blind end called the Bowman's capsule. I'll show you an overhead or a picture of that in just a second. And they have capillaries that are around there, a ball of capillaries called the glomerulus, which is inside the Bowman's capsule. And that is where the filtrates are going to enter into the collection duct. And the other thing, first starting about filtration, we're going basically small solutes, water, vitamins, urea, are all going to enter into the lumen or the collection duct. And we're going to go over the pathway, but right now, make a note of all these terms that you need to know. Everything that is in a box is the vocabulary word that you would need to know. One other thing I want to say before we leave this interstitial fluid that we're talking about, that is that there is a small layer of fluid that is between cells. This is called interstitial fluid. It would be part of the glycocalyx or the extracellular matrix of animal cells. And it turns out this interstitial fluid, maintaining the osmotic molarity of that fluid is part of how the kidney will actually work. So you need to kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so just looking at this overhead of the kidney, you can see this is the outer part, or the cortex, and then the inner part is the medulla. Notice there's two layers of the medulla as well. If you look at this figure, you can see that there's the filtrates include water, salts. Try to get a little closer here so it looks better. The bicarbonate, hydrogen, urea, glucose, amino acids, and drugs sometimes end up in there. So things that you take, for whatever reason might end up in there. All right, so notice the red is active transport and the blue is passive transport. So up here at the top, the red, this little part right here, these are the capillaries of the glomerulus. And that's going to enter into, or be a little ball of capillaries at the beginning, or the Bowman's capsule of a nephron. Let's just go over the areas of the nephron. This is the proximal tubule, that means close to the entry. Then this is the descending loop of Henle. It goes back up the ascending loop of Henle. The distal tubule, which is the one furthest away, and then there's going to be the collection duct, which is over here. All of the collection ducts of all the nephrons will go to the ureter, like we were discussing before. So make a note of the things that are entering into and out of, whether, they are entering in by active transport. Of course, that would require energy. Or if they are exiting, entering in by passive transport. In this case, so what is happening here is that the fluids that are basically right here, these are the things that are going to be collected back right away by the kidney. That is back into the bloodstream and therefore not leaving the body. And these are the things that are going into the duct. That is things that are going to end up coming down the duct and being transported. Okay, so basically we have, fluids, mainly containing urea, but also a lot of water, some salts, drugs perhaps, etc., that are going into the tubule. The first part of the kidney here, this is part of the reabsorption. It's going to be reabsorbing some water. So there's a lot more water inside of the tubule right now than there is in the outer medulla. Part of that has to do with the fact that over here in this next couple of parts, we are actively transporting out some salt. So there will be salt in the interstitial fluid, making it hyperosmotic, and that means that water is going to tend to want to move into there. So this is one of the ways that the water is reclaimed by the kidney. Then as you go down the descending loop of Henle, you can see that salt will end up making it into this part. Now the reason why salt will travel is that it's higher concentration on the inside of the duct than it is in this part. So it's going to passively move into there. As you move up, though, here, the salt is actually actively transported out. That is because we're getting a lot of salt here. This part is very salty, one of the ways that the water is reclaimed. And this is actively transporting salts out because as we go from here to here, the salt level is decreasing. So the activity has to be transporting it out. Then notice at the distal tubule, we're reclaiming back some salts if we need them. Bicarb, again, if there's any bicarb left in there, and absorbing maybe excess potassium or hydrogen ions if there's in excess, but it depends on how much is in your body or interstitial fluid there. And then what is happening is the urine or the materials left in the duct are mainly urea, and still a little bit of water and still a little bit of salts, but mainly urea is left in there. More salts are pumped out, so again making this salty again, so the water moves out, and then more urea is also pumped out, and because there's urea and salts down here, the water will also move out. Now the urea that moves out down here will tend to, because it will make a higher concentration than is in here, it will actually tend to move into there and just like be concentrated again. So we're concentrating the urea over here and going out of the ureter.